Hey guys, welcome back to another video by Simplilearn. In today's video, we're going to look at top web developer interview questions. Now, web development basically involves building and maintaining websites. A web developer is responsible for how the website feels and functions. He's also responsible for the user interface, page layout, and backend systems. So if you wish to become a web developer, then you're in the right place. This video will give you the top interview questions asked for web developers. But before we begin, if you haven't subscribed to our channel already, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to never miss an update. So here's what we'll be learning. First, we'll look at some commonly asked interview questions in HTML. Moving on, we'll look at some of the commonly asked CSS interview questions. Then JavaScript, PHP, and MySQL. So without further ado, let's begin.
The top 30 interview questions based on HTML. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is the most widely used language for developing web applications. It was created by Berners-Lee in the year 1991, but it was published in the year 1995. HTML4 was a popular breakthrough version and got published in the year 1991. This version gained a lot of popularity and was adopted all over the globe for developing web applications. So without further ado, let's get started with the interview questions based on HTML. So the first question: what is HTML? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is the language of the internet. It is a standard text formatting language used for creating and displaying pages on internet. HTML documents are made up of the elements and tags that format it properly and display it on pages. So we have our next question now. What are HTML tags? So the answer for this question is HTML tags are used for placing the elements in a proper and appropriate format. Tags use the symbols greater than and less than to set them apart from the HTML content. The HTML tags need not to be closed always. For example, in case of images, the closing tags are not required for an image tag. Now, followed by the second question, we have our third question. What are HTML attributes? The attributes are the properties that can be added to an HTML tag that change the way the tag behaves or displayed. For example, an image tag. An image tag has src attribute with which you can use the source from which you have to display the image from. Now the attributes are added right after the name of the HTML tag inside the brackets. The attributes can only be added to opening or self-closing tags, but never in closing tags. Now followed by third question, we have our next question. What is marquee in HTML? Marquee is used for scrolling text on a web page. It scrolls the image or text up, down, left or right automatically. To apply for a marquee, you have to use marquee tags. Now we have our fifth question. How do you separate a section of text in HTML? We separate a section of text in HTML using the below tags, which are the break tag, paragraph tag, and block quote. The break tag is used to separate a line of text. It breaks the current line and shifts the flow of the text line to a new line. Followed by that, we have the paragraph line. The paragraph line is used to write a paragraph of text. And third one, the block quote. The block quote tag is used to define large quoted sections. Now we have our sixth question. Define the types of lists in HTML. So we have the three types of lists in HTML, which are the ordered list, unordered list, and definition list. So first we'll discuss the ordered list. The ordered list uses OL tag and displays elements in a numbered format. Next we have the unordered list. The unordered list uses UL tag and displays elements in a bulleted format. Thirdly, we have the definition list. The definition list uses DL, DT, and DD tags and displays elements in the form of definition like a dictionary. Next we have our seventh question. How do you align list of elements in an HTML file? We can align the list elements in an HTML file by using indents. If you indent each nested list and further than the parent list, then you can easily align and determine the various lists and the elements that it contains. Now we have our eighth question. Differentiate between ordered list and unordered list. So the answer for this question is an unordered list uses UL tags and each element of the list is written between LI tags. The items are displayed as bullets rather than numbers. Now coming into ordered list. So for creating an ordered list, you'll be using OL tags and each element inside the list is written using LI tags. The list items are displayed using numbers rather than bullet points. Now we have a sample on the screen right now. So the first three elements are a set of unordered lists which are represented using bullet tags. And the second set, which is the coffee, tea, and milk, is an ordered list which is represented using numbers. Now moving ahead, we have the ninth question. How do you display a table in HTML web page? So the table in HTML can be created or displayed using the table tag. So it also uses to manage the layout of the page, for example, header section, navigation bar, body content, footer section, etc., etc. So given below are a list of HTML tags used for displaying table in an HTML web page. So we have table, tr, th, etc., etc. Table is used to define a table. Tr is used to define a row in a table. Th for header. Td for a cell. Caption is used to define a caption, and we have the col group, which is used to specify a group of one or more columns in a table for formatting. Next we have col, which is used with col group element to specify column properties for each column. Next we have tbody, which is used to group the body content in a table. Next we have thead, tfooter, which are used for header content and footer content respectively. Moving forward, we have our 10th question. How do you display the given table in an HTML web page? So the answer for this question is written on the right side part of my screen. This is the sample code which you can use to represent or display a table which is given in this particular format over here. Now followed by this, we have our 11th question. How do we insert a comment in HTML? So the answer for this question is, we can insert a comment in HTML by beginning with lesser than sign and ending with a greater than sign. For example, as shown in the right side part of my screen, which is hello world. Now moving ahead, we have our 12th question. How do you insert a copyright symbol in HTML? So you can insert a copyright symbol by using ampersand copy semicolon or ampersand hashtag 169 semicolon in an HTML file. Now moving ahead, we have our 13th question. So what is a white space in HTML? So the answer for this question is, an empty sequence of space characters is called as white space in HTML. This white space is considered as a single space character in HTML. Whitespace helps the browser to merge multiple spaces into one single space, and so taking care of indentation becomes easier. Whitespace helps in better organizing the content and tags, making them readable and easy to understand. With this, let's move into the 14th question. How do you create links in different sections within the same HTML web page? So the answer is anchor tags. We can use anchor tag along with referencing through the use of hashtag symbol to create several links to different sections within the same web page. Moving ahead, we have the 15th question. How do you create a hyperlink in HTML? So the answer is, we can use anchor tag. Again here the same thing. We can use anchor tag to create a hyperlink within the HTML that links to another web page. The hyperlink can be added to images too. Now moving ahead into our 16th question.
If getting your learning started is half the battle, what if you could do that for free? Visit SkillUp by Simplilearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
Define an image map. So the answer for this question is, an image map in HTML helps in linking with the different kinds of web pages using this single image. It can be used for defining spaces in the images that are made part of the image mapping process. Moving ahead, we have our 17th question. Why do we use style sheet in HTML? A style sheet helps in creating a well-defined template for HTML web page that is both consistent as well as portable. A single style sheet template can be linked to various web pages, which makes it easier to maintain and change the look of the website. Now the 18th question, what is semantic in HTML? So the answer for this question is, semantic HTML is a coding style. It is the use of HTML markup to reinforce the semantics or the meaning of the content. For example, the semantic HTML B tag is not used for bold statement, as well as I tag, which is not used for italic. Instead, we use strong and EM tags. Now, followed by the 18th question, we have our 19th question. What is SVG in HTML? So the HTML SVG is used to describe the vector or raster graphics. SVG images and their behaviors are defined in XML text sheets. It is mostly used for vector type diagrams like pie charts, two-dimensional graphs in an XY coordinate system. Now moving ahead, we have our 20th question. What would happen if there is no text between the HTML tags? So the answer for this question is really simple. There would be nothing to format if there is no text present in between the tags. Therefore, nothing will appear on the screen. Some tags, such as the tags without closing tag, like image tag, do not require any text between them. Now, followed by the 20th question, we have our next question. How do you create nested web pages in an HTML? So nested web pages basically mean a web page within a web page. We can create nested web pages in HTML using the built-in iframe tag. The HTML iframe tag defines an inline frame, for example, which is displayed on the right side part of my screen. You can see the iframe source, which redirects the user to Simplilearn's official web page. Now followed by that we have our 20-second question. How do you add buttons in HTML? So we can use the built-in button tag in HTML to add buttons to the HTML web page. So on the right hand part of my screen you can see the implementation of button to an HTML web page. Now followed by 20-second question we have our 23rd question. What are the different types of headings in HTML? So the answer for this question is there are basically 6 types of heading tags in HTML which are defined with H1 to H6 tags. Each type of the heading tag displays different text size from another, where H1 is being the largest and H6 is being the smallest. So on the right hand part of my screen you can see the implementation of heading tags from H1 to H6. Now the output for this particular code segment is the H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. So you can see that H1 is being the biggest one and H6 is being the smallest one. Now moving ahead into our 24th question, how do you insert an image in the HTML web page? So the answer for this question is you can insert an image in the HTML web page by using the following code, which is displayed on the right side part of my screen. You can see we have a image source is equals to tulip.jpeg, which is used for inserting an image into your HTML web page. Now our 25th question. What is the alt attribute in HTML? Now the answer for this question is the alt attribute is used for displaying the text in place of an image whenever the image cannot be loaded due to any technical issue. So basically when you have poor internet connection and you're trying to load an image, you can see some sort of text in place of an image. So that particular text is nothing but the alt attribute. Now moving ahead we have our 26th question. How are hyperlinks inserted in the HTML web page? You can insert a hyperlink in the HTML web page by using the following code, which is present on the right side part of my screen. You can use the anchor tag along with href, and inside that particular tag you can use the URL to which you want your users to redirect to. Now followed by this we have our 27th question. How do you add color to the text in HTML? So the answer for this question is you can add color to the text by using the following code, which is present on the right side part of my screen, where you can add red color and blue color, green color to this particular paragraph and headings. Now followed by 27th question we have our 28th question. How do you add CSS styling in HTML? So there are 3 particular ways to add CSS to your HTML. There are inline CSS, external style sheet and internal style sheet. We'll discuss each of these methods in a bit more detail. First we have the inline CSS. So it is used when less amount of styling is needed or in cases where only a single element has to be styled. To use inline styles, add the style attribute in the relevant tag. Now moving ahead we have the external style sheet. This is used when the style is applied to many elements or HTML pages. Each page must link to the style sheet using the link tag. Now we have the last one, which is the internal style sheet. It is used when a single HTML document has a unique style and several elements need to be styled to follow the format. Internal style sheet is added in the head section of the HTML page by style tag. Now followed by this we have our 29th question. What hierarchy do the style sheets follow? The answer for this question is if a single selector includes 3 different style definitions, the definition that is closest to the actual tag takes precedence. Inline style takes priority over embedded style sheets, which takes priority over external style sheets. Now our last question for the session today. How do you add JavaScript to an HTML web page? So the answer for this question is we basically have 3 methods to add a JavaScript to our HTML web page. They are inline, script block and external JavaScript file. First we'll discuss the inline. You can add JavaScript to your HTML elements directly whenever a certain event occurs. JavaScript code can be added using attributes of the HTML tags that support it. Now the next one, that is the script block. You can define a script block anywhere inside the HTML code, which will get executed as soon as the browser reaches to that part of the document. This is why script blocks are usually added at the end part of the HTML documents. Now the last one, that is the external JavaScript file. You can also add or import the JavaScript code from a separate file and keep your HTML code clutter-free. This is especially useful if there is a large amount of scripting added to the HTML web page.
CSS interview questions. As we know it very well, today in a current scenario, you being as a front-end developer, CSS playing a very important role. So in interview, what kind of questions are asked and what kind of answers we have to give, let's talk about those. Okay, so let's get started with those questions and answers. Okay, now here we'll talk about basic CSS interview questions. Now, name some CSS frameworks. As we know it very well, today in CSS environment, there are so many frameworks are available. Okay, like we talk about CSS, these are the basically necessary libraries which offers you some very popular ready-made components which you can utilize into your existing project, and without writing much code, you can really create some awesome effects. So some of the very popular libraries are like in Foundation, Bootstrap, Gumby, UKit, Semantic UI, and many more which are available here. Okay. Now, what do you understand by the universal selector? See, universal selector, as you know it very well in CSS, normally we talk about specific selectors, like in talk about class selectors, ID selectors. They select a specific set of elements or a specific element. When we talk about universal selectors, universal selector is matches any element types, like instead of selecting elements of a particular type. So you talk about like an asterisk where all elements irrespective of what name and what category they have it, all will be selected. Next, tell us about rule set. See, typically rule set is for the identification for selector which can be attached with other selectors. So there are normally two rule sets are available. One we talk about declaration block and we talk about selector. So declaration block contains one or more semicolons separated by declarations, set of styles which we say, and the selector is means or which particular element this CSS style will be intended for. Next, what are the elements of CSS box model? Okay, so we know it very well, the CSS box model is all about offering you the layout which is a part of the design element. So in CSS we can see these elements are like in images, you talk about text, okay, you talk about padding which is so called area around the content, you talk about border, talk about margin, okay, so you talk about this CSS box model. Next, difference between CSS3 and CSS2. We know it very well, CSS has changed a lot and CSS3 has brought so many new features. So we talk about the difference. So in CSS2, so CSS splits up the different sections of code into the modules. So in CSS3, both CSS and HTML were put into the single file. In CSS3, there were no new way of writing the CSS rules. There are new view rules are available in writing a CSS rules. Normally in CSS3, it is a backward compatibility maintained by with the CSS3. But in CSS2, we do not have any backward compatibility maintained by the CSS2 here. Now, how can CSS be integrated into the HTML page? Like, in order to utilize this, we always use a style sheet. We use style tag. Okay, so multiple options are available. One, we talk about using the style tag in a head section. Else we talk about inline styling with an element itself. Or third, we talk about external style sheet which you can link it with your current HTML page, which anyways enforce reusability. Coming back, what is the RGB stream? So RGB stands for red, green and blue. So it represents a color in CSS. So they are basically starting with the color number 0 goes till 256. Next, what is the purpose of developing a CSS? Okay, the main purpose of developing a CSS to basically offer the visual appearance to give the better look and feel to your code, so that your HTML will offer only the skeleton part, but when it comes to the beautification, you talk about organization and everything, you talk about the CSS. Okay, so CSS offers the styling part of your web page which looks more attractive. So what is the difference between class and ID? See, these are two different type of selectors are available in CSS. Class selectors and ID selectors. So class is the way of using these HTML elements. So they are not unique and have multiple elements, where the ID is unique and it can be assigned to a single element. So with CSS, different documents can be controlled using the single style. So style can be grouped in a complex situation to offer the consistent look for the multiple HTML pages. So that is what the advantages you have it. So you can group multiple styles together and that you can reuse over the different pages to offer the consistent styling. Okay. Now we talk about some intermediate CSS interview questions. So here in the intermediate level, you will see like the first question is like what define a Z index. See, Z index is specify the stack order of the elements that overlap each other. Okay, so its default value is 0 and can take both negative and positive values. Okay, the higher the Z index value is stacked above the lower index element. So it normally takes the following value, talk about like an auto, number, initial and inherit. Next, you talk about what are the benefits of CSS Sprite. See, the main benefit of CSS Sprite is like loading a multiple image is not an issue. Okay, blinking is not seen. There's some advantages are available. Like when you talk about like one single or small images, it really takes a lot of time to download it individually. So CSS Sprite's loading multiple image is not an issue. Blinking is not seen because normally what happens, blinking happens when the image is getting loaded. So advanced downloading of asset doesn't make a place of until needed. That's the benefit of having the CSS sprites. Next, how can you target the H3 and H2 with the same styling? So you can do the comma separated. So you can see multiple elements can be targeted with using comma separated. So you use comma separated values to give the consistent style to both the elements. So name and media types allowed by CSS. So media types are basically a part of your responsiveness. Different media types are allowed like in speech, audio, visual, tactile media, continuous or paged media, grip media or bitmap or interactive media. These are all type of medias are allowed in CSS. So how can you use CSS to control image repetition? So we talk about no repeat. So background repeat properties which is available. So you can see background repeat none, so that it would not be repeated again and again within your background. Okay, so we're talking about the next questions like about the image scrolling control. How you can control the image scrolling so that you want the image to be remain fixed and rest of the part gets scrolled. So here it is a part of your background attachment property. So here you say the background repeat, no repeat, and you see background attachment fixed, so that when you scroll down, your image is not going to be scrolled. So that is the benefit of this image control scrolling. Now, name some font related CSS attributes. So we have some options available, like you talk about font style, weight, variance, size, family. These are the font related CSS attributes. Define contextual selector. So normally in CSS, the contextual selectors allows developer to specify style of a different part of the document. Okay, so style which you utilize it can be aligned directly to the static HTML pages to create independent classes. Okay, that's called contextual selector. So responsive web design. Responsive web design is a web design which you want to remain consistent across multiple device screens or the different type of screen sizes, and you want to offer the better layout which doesn't looks bloated over the different websites. So that's the benefit which you see when you talk about like responsive web design. CSS nomenclature. CSS nomenclature means the styling commands are written in a value on a property fashion. Okay, so normally CSS includes a system terminator semicolon. The entire style is wrapped in a curly braces and attached to the dedicated selector. Okay, so this actually creates a style sheet that can be applied to an HTML page. So this is the standard nomenclature. Okay, now coming back to the next point, advanced CSS interviews. I will tell you about few questions which are normally asked as a part of advanced CSS. Okay, now when do you use translate instead of absolute positioning? Okay, so the translate in a CSS, okay, transform value on changing. You can talk about opacity or transform. Okay, so the browser reflow or repaint is not triggered when you talk about this translate. Okay, so the transform requires a browser to create a GPU layer for elements. Okay, but using the CPU changes absolute positioning property. So translate is more efficient and result in shorter paint times. Next, name different ways to position same aspects in CSS. Okay, so you talk about positioning properties. Okay, so there are 5 different positions values are. Number one, you talk about fixed, you talk about static, you have absolute, you have got relative, and you have got sticky. So 5 different positioning elements are available in CSS. What are mixins? Mixins is a similar to the function block of code returning a single value. It is a kind of function which we say. Okay, so traditionally it is used in a SAS, or okay, which is typically called statically awesome style sheet. So that code that directly compiles into the CSS styles. So how can you optimize the web page for the prints? So you actually identify a control, okay, so-called contents areas of a website. A general website has a footer, header, sidebar, or nav bar, or content area. So normally we say conquer the print media without changing the website's integrity by using the page breaks. So creating a styles for print, size your page for print, and avoid unnecessary HTML tables. So using this you can optimize the print of your web pages. So what is the meant by CSS working under the hood? So when your browser display a document, it actually combines the style, okay, which presents information and document content. So the document is actually processed in 2 stages. Number one, conversation, okay, or conversion of HTML and CSS into the document object model, so-called DOM, and DOM display contents of browser. Difference between the use of ID selector and class selector, we have already seen that, but this is a simple demo of how the ID selector and class selectors are used. The difference is all about using, so here you have a called ID which you use dot, sorry, this hash, and there you use dot. So tell us about CSS float property. So normally CSS float properties of positioning an image to the right or left as needed. So it typically including text wrapping around it. So all properties of elements used before it remain unchanged. That is known as called float. So what do you understand with the pseudo elements? So pseudo elements are special effects to your selectors. So normally CSS finds, okay, use in applying styles in a HTML markup. So if additional markup or style is not feasible for a document, then pseudo elements help by allowing extra markup without interfering with the original document. Difference between logical and physical tag. So normally logical tags focus on the content, okay, and are older as compared to the physical ones. Logical ones do not find much usage in presentation in terms of utilization. At the same time, physical ones find application in presentations. So how media type works in CSS type? So we have discussed already about the media type. So we normally say 4 different type of media properties are available, like in print, speech, and screens. Okay, like you talk about print media screen, so we use always @ media print. You talk about H2, so this changes according to what option you're offering it. So guys, here we have multiple CSS question, and frequently our CSS interview questions are offered. Like, tell something about CSS3. Okay, so we say CSS is divided into the modules and is supported by almost every single browser. Okay, it is an advanced version of CSS2 and offering you lot many other advanced level features, which typically in CSS2 we do not have that. Okay, now we talk about how CSS selectors used. So with the CSS selectors we can choose, any element of your HTML. Okay, so you talk about element, attribute, you talk about any child selector, you can basically select it. So what are CSS image scripts? So the group of image placed into the one single image is in a CSS image script. It can reduce the load time because individual images certainly take more time. So this takes more time comparatively. So we have got explain CSS specificity. So the CSS specificity is a rank or score that decides style declarations to be used to an element. ID selectors have high specificity while universal selector has low specificity. That's how the specificity is all about. So the 4 CSS categories that authorize the selector's specificity levels are IDs, inline, element, pseudo, and class and style attributes. So these are a different type of conditions. Based on that, the specificity is considered. Define gradients in CSS. We know the gradient are again a CSS3 property that allows displaying the smooth transformation from one type of color to the another color. Okay, so that's really awesome technique through which you can talk about linear gradient or else you talk about radiant gradients. Two different type of gradients are used and supported. So what are the properties of flexbox? So we know flexbox are basically designed for the alignment purpose. So typical the flex boxes are flex direction. You talk about wrap, flow content, align items, and the contents like that. It is once again the property of alignment. So tell us about the usage of CSS box model. So normally box model is a box binding in HTML elements that includes padding, border, margin, and the actual contents for the more better alignment. So normally with the box model, you get an authority to add a border all around the elements and define space between the elements. So what are the position states in CSS? So we normally talk about 4 positions in CSS, so-called relative, static, absolute, and fixed. The default position is state is always static. So difference between absolute and relative in CSS. So normally relative is useful for some tags in CSS. If we write like 20 pixels, then padding shift 20 pixels in a right. But when we talk about absolute, so it is absolute is relative to the non-static parent. That means if I'm talking about, if we say right 20 pixels, the result will be 20 pixels far from the right edge of the parent element. That's how the relative and absolute position is. So what is the common between class and ID? See, both class and ID used in HTML. Okay, for the CSS purpose, the ID is used as an element where the class is used as a block. So this particular information is all about giving you the idea of like what kind of questions it may be asked during the time of interview, which is related to your JavaScript. So this particular slides will help you to understand what kind of questions you may expect from your interviewer and kind of answers you need to get ready with. So let's get started with the JavaScript interview questions. So let's get started with the beginner JavaScript questions. We have multiple levels available. Here we start with the beginner level first. So the first question is always like, what do you understand about a JavaScript? So we know it very well. The JavaScript is a very popular scripting language. It is basically designed for client-side scripting and server-side scripting development. Why server-side? Because nowadays JavaScript is also used in a backend using Node.js. So that's why it is also called for server-side development. So the question is like, JavaScript is actually also helps the developers to develop some more responsive HTML pages, okay, which can be well understood and executed by the web browser, okay, which having the support capabilities for object-oriented programming skills. Now, the next question is like, what is the difference between a JavaScript and Java? See, the reason is because the JavaScript initials are Java, so everybody think like, okay, there is some relationship with the Java. So actually the thing is like, there is no relationship with Java. I would say JavaScript is object-based language, where the Java is object-oriented language. A lot of syntax and some standards are matching with Java. That's why exactly it is saying it is JavaScript. Otherwise, there is nothing like that. But another difference, if I talk about, JavaScript is mainly designed to run in the browsers, where the Java is designed especially for the virtual machine and operating system. Now the other thing is like JavaScript does not need a compilation because it is directly used interpreter. But when you talk about Java, it requires a compiler as well as the interpreter both. Now, what type of various data types are supported? So all standard data types like in byte, short, int, long, float, double, character, boolean, these all different type of data types are supported in JavaScript also, just like in traditional programming languages. Okay. Now, what are the features of JavaScript? So the first feature which you always remember, it is a lightweight programming language. It is being interpreted by the browsers rather than compiled. It is a cross-platform. That means it can work across multiple browsers. So it is not specific to the browsers. So that we need to understand. Next, it is an open source. Hence, you do not need to pay for any licensing fees. It comes free with all different type of browsers. It is an object-oriented, but I would not say it is a pure object-oriented. I would rather say it is an object-based language. Next, it can gel well with multiple front-end as well as the back-end technologies, because most of the languages which are coming up in a market, they have a support available to get integrated with the JavaScript, and due to that, JavaScript is very, very popular. So it is also used especially for the development like a network-based application. So in case if you want to have some kind of network-centric application, here the JavaScript really suits very, very well. Okay. Next question, what are the advantages of JavaScript? So the first advantage which we are talking about, like JavaScript basically have a very, very nice interactive language. It is a event based, okay, functional programming language, I would say. So it is a quick feedback because it loads very, very fast in your existing web pages. It is giving you the support of developing a very, very rich user interface. Because of that, your application look consistent across multiple type of browsers. Another is like we have a variety of JavaScript based frameworks are available. Like you can talk about Angular, you talk about React, you talk about Vue. They're all basically different type of JavaScript based frameworks that helps the developer to enhance their skills with writing less amount of codes. So how you create a script or how you create an object in JavaScript, it is very simple. The curly braces. Curly braces is basically designed to give you the feel of this is a typical object. There are a variety of ways are there to create an object in JavaScript, which we're gonna see in our next PPT. Okay, now here we see about the next set of questions which are there with us, like how to create an array in JavaScript. So creating an array in JavaScript is very, very easy. Now you can see the square brackets. Okay, they are the way to basically create an array in a JavaScript. So just a square brackets are a very, very simpler way, so-called LL literals, to create the array objects in JavaScript. Actually, you should know that array is also an object, which is a predefined object, comes with your JavaScript, so-called implicit objects. Now, what are the built-in methods available in JavaScript? So you remember about these methods comes from those built-in objects comes with your JavaScript, as we have mentioned in our last slides, like math, boolean, string, okay, date. They're all basically predefined objects are available. Under those objects these methods are actually available. Like date, if you can see, it will display the current date and time. Concat, to concat two different type of string. Push, some adding some new records into your array. Pop, to remove. Round, to do the round. Length, to calculate the length of the string. So these are all some well-known methods or frequently used methods available in JavaScript. Now, what different type of scopes available in JavaScript for the variables now? So scopes are basically designed to give you the visibility within your program. Okay, so different type of scopes are available. One is called a global scope. So global scope is having the availability within a file. Anywhere else you can access this particular code or particular variable. That is called global scope. And local scopes are those scopes which are accessible within a function and hence cannot be accessed by any other function or outside of this function. So two standard type of scopes which are available here. Now, what is this keyword in JavaScript? This means to refer the current object. Okay, so whenever you see this keyword, it is designed to refer the current object in JavaScript. So we typically define this keyword to assign the value to my current object properties. Usually this is a place where this keyword is mostly used. Now, what are the conventions of giving the names to the variables? Okay, so some standard naming convention which we should always follow, but few things, as you remember, there are certain reserve keywords are there in JavaScript which you cannot offer while giving the names to your variables or to your functions. Like if I can say var, let, const, and many more which are there available, which you cannot assign to your any existing variable provided or functions under your JavaScript. Now, here they are trying to say variable names cannot begin with any numeric value. Like you cannot give var with ABC, so not ABC, I would say rather 1, 2, 3 or something like that. So they must be a combination of, I would say, integer as well as a character. Okay, so they must only begin with letter or underscore characters. It is the same like as we have it in Java also. Now, naming conventions are very important. JavaScript is a case sensitive, hence the small a and capital A have two different meanings for the JavaScript. So that part needs to be well taken care of. Now, what is a callback in JavaScript? So you need to understand the callback in JavaScript is a kind of function which you are passing as a parameter to the another function to execute. Okay, so callbacks are mainly designed to tell your application that they need to wait rather than continue to execute. So callbacks will help you to behave asynchronously, and that's what exactly this most valuable feature of JavaScript. So as I discussed already, so it is where the function needs to be passed to get executed. So how do you debug a JavaScript code? So to debug your JavaScript code in any browser, you can just press the F12, no matter which browser you have it, either Chrome or Firefox or anyone, you can just press the F12 key and there you can get this option called debugger, where you can just go and perform all the necessary debugging related stuff right over there. Or so many other editors like in Sublime Text, Visual Studio Code, Atom, they're all offering you the built-in support to debug your JavaScript code. Now, what is the difference between a function declaration and function expression? So there's a very simple difference. So when you say function ABC here, okay, so you declare as a separate statement within the same JavaScript code. Okay, in another example, what you do, you define a function within a variable name called A, which you can create to construct some another object for this. That's the only difference between these two. So this function can be called before the function is defined, and this will be created when the function is pointing and reaching it. Okay, so it can be used only after that. So that's what we have discussed now. Going forward, this offers the better code readability and better code organization, and that the other part is basically used to create a conditional or a declaration functions. So what are the ways of adding the JavaScript code in an HTML file? So there are, I would say, two ways are available. One, either you can declare it in a separate file, you can add it, or second, you can write a embedded JavaScript code where you can just write a JavaScript code either in your head tag or body tag. But there'll be one difference, like if you're writing it as an embedded JavaScript, you cannot use it for the different HTML file, where the internal JavaScript file will be limited to that HTML. However, external JavaScript will be more useful when you want to reuse it again and again. So these were some standard basic JavaScript questions for us. So let's go ahead and talk about something which is related to your intermediate questions in JavaScript. Now, so what do you understand about the cookies? See, the cookies are basically a kind of a small text file, okay, which is kept in your browser and contains the information about your client activities. Okay, so whenever the client is accessing your websites, these websites can track your activities through this particular cookies. Okay, so they just basically record your general behaviors, like what you're doing with your website, so that accordingly they can give you the better recommendations. Now, how you're going to create a cookie in your JavaScript? So creating a cookie is one of the property available under your document object, so that you can create it using document.cookie and give a key. So your all cookie stands with your key and value pair. So you have a key, you have a value pair. So how are you going to read the cookie? So cookie you can read with the help of the same property called document.cookie, and here you can just use this statement. Like what? Key and value pair. So whatever the keys you have defined, similar key you will be reading it to give the value of whatever option you want to read it. Now, how are you going to delete the cookie? So cookie can be deleted it very easily by calling this delete cookie function, where you can just tell about the time and duration when you want the cookie to be get deleted. So when you set the expiry time, so cookies are deleted after a specific period of time, that will be treated as a good programming practice. So what is the difference between a let and var keyword? See, there's a new feature which is there added called let keyword, which is known as called block level scope. The block level scope means your variable whichever you're defining under any block level statement will be limited to that particular block. Like if you're defining it any opening block and closing block, so beyond that you cannot see that. Suppose if you're defining it under if block or any block, so these type of variables are no longer accessible outside, where the var keyword will be typically treated as a global variable and hence it can be accessed anywhere. So what is the closure in JavaScript? So closure is basically going to give you a better way of providing the consistent way of developing a JavaScript code for the developer. So closures are basically created whenever a variable that is defined outside of this current scope can be accessed within the current scope. Okay, that means which is a variable which is defined outside of this scope, even using the scope of this particular closure, it can be accessed inside too. Now, what are the arrow functions in JavaScript? Friends, arrow function in JavaScript is very popular now. They're just gonna give you a kind of alternative way of defining the function keyword. They are just a shortcut way of defining the function in JavaScript. These are simple handy functions, I would say. So what are the different ways of HTML can be accessed in JavaScript codes? So there are multiple ways are there. So you can access using document.getElement by class name. You can access getElement by ID. You can get access document getElement by tag name, and you can say document.querySelector. So these are the multiple options are there through which you can access the element within your HTML tags. What are the ways of defining a variable? So var keyword, as we discussed, you can define a variable. You can also define the variable using const. So if you define any variable using const, So these variables will get constantly declared and it cannot be changed once you define the value. So any value or any variable which is defined using const, it cannot be changed in later stages. What are imports and exports in JavaScript? So to make your JavaScript modular, so there's an option available of importing it and exporting it. So what exactly the difference? Difference is very simple, like you are writing the set of JavaScript code and if you want to get it accessed outside in another JavaScript file. So how the two JavaScript files can communicate with each other, that is where exactly the important export code comes to make your JavaScript highly reused and more modular. Now, these are the quick example. As you can see now, two different files are there. So if you want to make your particular variable or function accessed outside, you always use export keyword with them. And if you want to access them out, you can just use an import keyword. As you can see, it is defined there. So another file can easily access the content of the previous files to make your code even more modular and useful. So what is the difference between a document and window in JavaScript? See, document is the one which is a part of your document part, which user can actually see that. Okay, so the document object is the object which falls under the category of window. Window is a top level object. So in JavaScript we have an option available named called BOM, that is called browser object model, in which the top level object which is there, that is called window, and under this we have a called document. So whatever you see under your browser, it is a part of your document. So what are some JavaScript frameworks and their uses? See, JavaScript frameworks are mainly useful to make your application more organized with less code and without getting into the detail. Okay, so having this particular framework will give you the opportunity so that developer can use the JavaScript in much more better way to write a complex code in more simplified manner. This is where exactly your frameworks are designed for. So there are some very prominent and useful frameworks like in React, Angular, Vue.js, and lot many other names are there in market, which will be using this JavaScript as a core and take the entire JavaScript development to the next level. So the next question is, what is the difference between a undefined and undeclared in JavaScript? See, it is very simple. Undefined means the variable which is undefined. You're declaring a variable, okay, and which you haven't defined. Okay, that means the variable has been declared but the value has not yet assigned. That is called undefined. Undeclared means the variable which you're trying to access, that itself is not available. It doesn't even exist. So what is the difference between undefined and null in JavaScript? See, undefined, as I already told you, it means the variable has been declared but it is not assigned with any value. Null is actually the assignment value that we can assign to any variable which contain no values, as an alternative I would say. So what is the difference between session storage and local storage? See, it is very simple. HTML5 has offered these features to you. So the session storage and local storage both offers you the data which can be stored in a browser, but session storage is short-lived. The moment your page is deleted or closed, the session data is immediately get deleted, where the local storage data is remain for the longer period of time, and the data doesn't get deleted after the browser history is over. Okay, so I would say the local storage time span is far bigger compared to the session storage. Okay everyone, so we'll have some advanced JavaScript questions now. We've already seen the beginner level as well as the intermediate level questions. Now it's time to discuss about some advanced level questions too. Like the first questions comes like, how do you empty an array in JavaScript? So it is very simple. If you want to assign, so there are a few ways of that. Number one, by assigning the array length to what? To the 0. So automatically it turns to empty. Second is what? By assigning the completely empty array. Okay, the third will be by popping up all the elements of the array. So multiple options are there, and the last which you talk about called by using the splice function. So these are the 4 important aspects are there which you can treat how to empty your JavaScript array in a very simplified manner. Now, what is the difference between event capturing and event bubbling? See, this is one of the very common question. We talk about event capturing. Event capturing is actually the kind of process where you just try to capture the event of outermost element and then propagating it to the innermost element. So event capturing is what, like, you're talking about picking up the element or picking up the event from the outermost, like you talk about called nested div tags. So you pick up the particular event from the most outermost div tag and you're just passing it to the innermost. That is called capturing. The bubbling is the process, okay, which starts with the innermost and goes to the outermost element. It's just an opposite direction. That is called event bubbling. So the question is one of the very popular, like what is the strict mode in JavaScript? See, the strict mode of JavaScript is introduced to give the better error handling capacity of the JavaScript. So whenever you talk about call strict mode, so all variables have to be declared explicitly. So you cannot leave it like that, and it cannot be assigned to the read-only properties. So we can enable the strict mode only by adding the use strict mode on the top of the JavaScript file. Now, what about and how we would be able to get the following output of the below JavaScript code? So we have a call var a equal to 10, and we have written one function in the if block, and after that we're just capturing the value of a, and then you are printing the value in a console.log. So what would be the output for that? See, it'll be a call 10 undefined. Once again, it'll be kind of what? It'll be undefined. How come it would be? Look, it is very simple. First thing, okay, in your application, you are basically saying the if condition statement in the code will evaluate the eval function. As you know it very well, what exactly the evaluation is. Later on, the eval function, okay, will take the function and will return the function abc, whatever the function it is available, and then inside the if statement it executes the abc and returns the undefined, because as you know it very well, the if statement code executes at runtime while the statement inside this if condition is being evaluated. So that's where exactly it is. Next, can you write the JavaScript code for adding the new element in a dynamic manner? Yes, exactly, you can write it down. So you have this very common function available named document.createElement. Like people say, like, I want to add the new text boxes when I click on the button. So I can write it very well. So either it will be a text box or it will be the new element you want to add it. So document.createElement is one of the very common, I would say, the function. And later on you can use the typical DOM functions, like I can talk about create next node or append child. So using this combination you can easily do so. Next, what is the difference between call and apply? Very common question. So the call method, whatever the method you have it in a call, these method arguments are provided individually, okay, along with this value. But in apply, what happens? Arguments are provided in the form of array along with this value. That is the only difference between call and apply. So what would be the output of the below JavaScript code? As you can see right now, we have written one object name called student, provided one property called college with abc. After that you're saying object.create, passing this student as an object itself, and after that you're saying delete student1.college and console.log student.come. So what would be the value for this? So it is very simple. It is a very simple example of object orientation. So the output will be what? abc, as we are accessing the property of student object. So certainly the value will be what? abc for sure. Now what would be the output for below JavaScript code? As you can see, now we have written a one function foo and it is return 11. So we are saying type of foo. So this will certainly refer to what? To the error. Reason is why? Because the function definition can have only single reference variable as its name. That's why exactly it will be throwing what? An error to you. How do you remove the duplicate value from the JavaScript array? It is very simple. We have a called filter function. So the filter method, I can basically call it, and 3 arguments it may be expecting it. the name of the array, the current element, and the index of the current element, so that it can remove all the duplicate elements from there. So how do you remove the duplicate elements from JavaScript array? So it is the same way I told you, like first it takes 3 parameters, so using the filter method and by using the for loop. So the empty array is used for sorting all the repeating elements. So like that you can simply make it more easy. So how can you draw a simple JavaScript DOM? So you can say it is a very simple JavaScript DOM elements which are there, where you can have the document and then the HTML and followed by all child elements like an head tag, body tag. Body may contain further child elements like an anchor tag. So these are all basically known as called a presentational elements through which this complete HTML hierarchy will contain inside this.
We'll discuss some of the frequently asked questions in PHP interviews. Now, the questions are categorized in 2 sections, beginner and advanced questions. So, without any further ado, let us get started with the beginner questions. Now, the most basic question is, what is PHP? So, PHP stands for Hypertext Preprocessor. It is a server-side scripting language that is embedded into HTML and is generally used for dynamic web development. PHP is also a very compatible language. That is, it also works efficiently with almost 20 different databases such as MySQL, PostgreSQL, etc. Next question, what is a session in PHP? Now, sessions in PHP are used to store data for users under a unique ID which can be then used across multiple web pages of a website. Next, what is peer in PHP? Now, peer stands for PHP Extension and Application Repository. It is a framework and repository for the reusable components. Focus on reusable components of PHP containing code snippets and libraries. Next, is PHP considered a case-sensitive language? So this is a very often asked questions in interviews. So PHP is partially case-sensitive, since variables in PHP are case-sensitive while functions and user-defined functions are not. Next, name different types of data types in PHP. So different data types in PHP include integer, float, string, boolean, array, object, null, and finally resource. So there are total 8 different data types that exist in PHP. Next question, how is echo different from print? Now echo, it can output multiple strings at a time, while in case of print, it can output only a single string. Now echo does not have a return value, while print always returns 1. That is the reason that is echo is faster, because it does not have to return a value, while print is slower in comparison to echo because it always returns a value. Now, as you can see, both of these commands, echo and print, are used in the exact same way. Next, what are the rules for naming a variable? Now there are certain rules which you have to follow, or certain good coding practices which you have to follow while naming a variable in your PHP code. So variable name must always begin with underscore or a letter. So it cannot begin with a number or a special character for that matter. Next, variable names can include numbers but not special characters. So suppose you want to name your variable number 1 to 3. So you can use this variable, but you cannot use number @ 1 to 3 since special characters are not included. Next, a variable in PHP is declared using this $sign followed by the variable name. Now, as you can see, this is how we declare a variable, $my_variable. You can also put a number in between or at the end while naming a variable, just not at the start. Next, name some popular PHP frameworks. So some of the popular PHP frameworks include Symfony, CodeIgniter, CakePHP, and Laravel. Moving on, how to check if a defined variable is null or not. So function is used to check if the defined variable has any value or not. So to use this, suppose you have this block of code in front of you. So suppose you want to check if this x variable that you've defined is null or not. So what you do is you put the isIt function inside the if condition, and it will return true if it's not null, while it will return false if it is a null value. Since it is not null, it returns true, and we can display echo as variable x is not null, while in the case of variable y, it is a null value, so the if condition will be false and it will not display anything. Next, how are objects in PHP passed? So objects in PHP are always passed by value, not by reference. Next question, how to display output directly to the browser? Now, in cases you want to display your output directly onto the browser while running a piece of code, you can use these special tags to display an output directly to the browser. Now, as you may notice, these tags does not contain the PHP written. You can use them directly and replace PHP with an equal to sign followed by what you want to display and end it with a question mark and a closing bracket. Moving on, what is define function used for in PHP? Now define is used to declare a constant in PHP. Also, in contrast to the variables, there's no need for a $sign before declaring a constant, since the value of a constant does not change. Now, this is how you can use the define function to declare a constant. Suppose you want to declare the value of pi as 3.14 throughout your PHP code, and which cannot be changed. So we can use define for that. Next question is related to this question, since what is constant function in use for in PHP then? So constant function returns the value of a constant. It is not used to define a constant, but it returns the value of a constant. So suppose you define a function constant using this define function and you want to return this value, you can use this constant function for that. Next, is multiple inheritance supported in PHP? So PHP only supports single level inheritance, which means a class can be extended from only one class using the keyword extended. Next, what are the different types of loops in PHP? So PHP consists of a while loop, a do while loop, a for loop, and finally a for each loop. So PHP consists of total 4 loops. Next question, how to concatenate two strings in PHP? Now, two strings can be easily concatenated using the dot operator in PHP. Now to do that, I'll show you with the help of a code. Suppose you want to concatenate or join these two strings, str1 hello guys, and the second string would be and welcome to Simply Learn, and want to display these strings together. So to do that, you need to use this dot operator in echo. As you can see, this dot operator, so first you write the name of the first string, then followed by the dot operator. I've given this space, and then the next dot operator, because this is also considered as a string, and then the third string variable, and this is how you concatenate two strings. Next question, what is the use of function num AR arguments? Now this function, as you can see, is used to return the number of arguments passed in a function. So suppose you pass a certain number of arguments in a function and want to know how many values or arguments were passed. You can use this function for that. So suppose in this sample code you want to know how many arguments were passed in this sample function. So to do that, we declare a variable number of arguments and we will equal it to the function number arguments. Now we will display it, and this sample has passed 3 arguments, so the output would be 3. Moving on, what are superglobal variables in PHP? Now, some predefined variables in PHP are known as superglobal variables because they are always accessible from any function, file, or class regardless of the scope. So, in all, they are globally accessible. So, suppose you write a piece of code and you declare a variable inside it, it would be a local variable and could be accessed only in that part of the code. But in case of superglobal variable, they are accessible throughout the entire code. They include global, server, request, post, get, files, env, cookie, and session. Moving on, how to invoke single line and multi-line comments. Now, a single line comment in PHP can be made using this hash followed by the comment or / followed by the comment. While in case of multi-line comments, you can use this hash star and write your comments in multiple lines and enclose it with a star and slash. What I'm going to do now is I am going to show you the use of these comments in actual VS Code. Now let us take this block of code for example. Now suppose you want to add a single line comment after this variable. So what you will do is you can use this /. This is a variable. Also you can use / this is also a variable. So this is a single line comment. Now if you try to write something else after this in the next line, it will take it as part of the code, not part of the comment. So what do you do when you need to write multiple lines of comment? So suppose you need to write 2-3 lines about this line of code. What you will do is you will use a /. Now write the comment, this is displaying simply learn. So this is a 3-line comment which you can end simply by star and a slash. This is how you write single line and multi-line comments. Now let's move on to the next question, that is name some common applications of PHP. So some of the most commonly used PHP applications are system functions, form handling. So PHP is very commonly used to handle the forms that you see on the web pages. CRUD tasks. Now CRUD tasks are create, read, update, and delete. So when you will be working with databases, this is a very important part of using databases, that is CRUD, and PHP is used very commonly in that. Next, accessing cookies, variables, and set cookies. And finally, data encryption. PHP provides security through some of its frameworks, which can be used and is used very commonly throughout a lot of websites. So now that we have gone through the beginner level questions that are frequently asked in PHP interviews, let us now move on to the advanced level questions. So the first question would be, how can you execute a PHP script from the command line? Now, a PHP script from a command line can be executed by opening the command line, and inside the command line you have to specify the name of the script or name of the PHP file that you want to run. Suppose you want to run a php_script.php, so you type in the name of the PHP script that you want to run, and that particular PHP script will be executed. Next, differentiate between a $$ variable and $$ variable. So what is the difference between the two? Now in case of a single $$ variable, it is a simple variable that is simply used to store data. So as we discussed earlier, it is a variable that we define to store different data types, that is integer, float, strings, etc. While a $$ variable is a reference variable of variable. So this is used to reference already existing variables. Now to use or to understand how these two work, you can see this particular block of code here. Now in this code, what you need to focus on is this is a simple variable hello, which contains the string welcome to Simplilearn, and we have defined another variable as var, which contains the string hello. Now in this echo, as you can notice, what we are doing is we are using this. Also, before that, you need to notice is this is the same string as the name of this variable. So first we are displaying this variable and then we are referencing this variable here. So what it is doing is it is referencing the value to another variable. So hello variable is being referenced. So when you execute this block of PHP script, what you get the output is hello, since this is the variable hello, and after that what you'll get is welcome to Simplilearn, since this variable is a reference to this variable. Next, differentiate between get and post method. Now get method is used to submit form data, while post method is also used for the same feature. So the difference between them is get method sends data as part of PHP page URL, web page URL, while a post method sends data through HTTP header. In get, the data, since the data is being sent through the URL, it is displayed in the URL of the web page, so it is not secure, while in case of post method it is a secure form of data transfer. Hence, when developing a website for some security purposes, usually we prefer post method. Next up, how to connect to a database using a PHP script. Now suppose if you are asked this question in an interview, what you need to do is you need to just write this block of code and explain it to the interviewer. Now suppose we have a PHP script and we want to connect it to a database. What we need to do is we will create 3 different variables, that is server name, username and password. Now what we are going to do is we will create another variable con that will be used to connect it, and then we'll use the MySQLi functions, which will then pass these variables to create a connection. So these variable values are localhost username password. These are the default values. Now to check if the connection is connected, what we are going to do is we will use an if condition. If the con variable gets an connect error, we will display a error message that is connection failed. If not, we will display connected successfully. Now as you can see here, these names can be the name of the server that you're trying to connect. I have used localhost username password for the default values. You can use the name of the database that you're trying to connect your PHP script to. Next up, what does final class and final method mean in PHP? Now a final class in PHP means that the class cannot be extended, while a final method means that it cannot be overridden. Now as you can see in this block of code, we have used the final keyword for a class and the final keyword for a function. Now suppose this final class is being inherited by this child class. What the program will return is an error, because once you use this final keyword, this class cannot be inherited. And similarly, suppose this function is trying to be overridden by this part of the code, it cannot be because we have used the final function. Next question, differentiate between function overloading and overriding. Now function overloading, the same function is used for different purposes based on the number of arguments inside the function, while in case of function overriding, the same name and same argument function is used in parent and child class respectively to change the behavior of parent class method. Now let me show you and demonstrate the difference with an example. So let us look at this code. So suppose you have a function named showTitle, which does contain a single parameter and displays, when called upon using this parameter, displays function 1. Now if you want to use the same name of the function for a different purpose, what you can do is you can increase or change the number of parameters inside the function. That is, it now contains 2 parameters. So when this same function is called using 2 parameters, it will function differently and display function overloading. So this is how function overloading works. Next, from this piece of code, we can understand function overriding. Suppose you display a function demo in a base class and you want to override this demo function inside the derived class. So what you do is you make another function with the same name inside the derived class with some different properties. As you can see, it displays something different. Now you create an object for the base class, and when you use this base class object to call this demo function, you can use the properties of this function here. While if you create another object, that is object 2 for the derived class, and you use this object to call upon the same demo function, you are overriding this base class demo function that was inherited. Instead, what it will use is it will use the properties of the derived demo function. So that is how you overload or override a class function in PHP. Now let's move on to the next question, that is differentiate between equal to and triple equal operator. So a double equal operator is generally used to check if the value of 2 operands are equal or not. It is generally used in case of conditional statements, while a triple equals to operator performs a type safe comparison, which means that it will only return true if both operands have the same type and the same value. So you can understand this more with this piece of code. So suppose in this case, since they both are equal, it will return true, while in this case they both have the same type, hence it will return true. Now let us check this equals to equal. So since they both are 1, and in PHP it will display as true since they are equal, while when you are type checking, that is, you are checking if they're equal with the same type and same value, it will display a false since one is an integer and the other one is a string value. Also, if you check 2 different strings with the type safe, it will also display true. Next question, how does exception handling work in PHP? So when an exception is thrown, code following the statement will not be executed, and PHP will attempt to find the first matching catch block. So if an exception is not caught, a PHP fatal error will be issued with an uncaught exception. An exception can be thrown and caught within PHP. So what we do is we use this try and catch method to try the code, and if an error occurs, we can catch. If an exception occurs, we can throw it, and the catch function will catch the exception, and if we do not include the catch function, it will result in a fatal error. Next up, differentiate between require and include. Now require, if a required file is not found, it will throw a fatal error and stop the code execution, while in case of include, if an essential file is not found, it will produce a warning and still execute the remaining scripts. So as you can see, both of these include and require are used in the exact same way with different functions. Next up, explain different types of errors in PHP. Now PHP consists of mainly 3 errors: notice, warning, and a fatal error. Now notice is a non-critical error, which means that something minor went wrong during execution and a lot of times you just don't pay attention to it. a warning is a critical error. Now it is given in condition where suppose an include function that we just discussed in the previous question went to retrieve a non-existent file. So suppose you use an include function and the file does not exist, it will display a warning. And the final is a fatal error. So it is a critical error resulting in termination of the code. So as we discussed in the try and catch part of the question, if an exception is thrown and we do not have a catch function for it, it will display a fatal error which will return in termination of the code. Next question, how to call a function by reference. So ampersand sign is used to call a function by reference. Now in case of reference, the actual value is modified if the value passed inside the function is also modified. While in case of value, the value of the original value does not change. So this piece of code here is an example of how you can call a function by reference. Here, as you can see, this ampersand sign will call this function by reference, and any changes made in the variables here will affect the original ones. Next question, create a singleton class in PHP. So how do we create a singleton class in PHP? Before that, let's have a look at what is a singleton class. Now, a singleton class in PHP is a class that can have only one object and hence provides only a single point of access. So generally in class, you can create as many objects as you want, and it will in turn create different access points into that block of code. So in a singleton class, you can only create a single object, hence singleton. So this piece of code, as you can notice, is used to create a singleton class. Now, to create a singleton class, you need to have the constructor function private. Now here, as you can see, a singleton class is created using this private construct, and it then checks if there's only one instance created, and if it is, it functions properly and displays initialize only once. Next question, how to encrypt a password using PHP. So PHP can be used for encryption techniques. Now the password underscore hash function creates a hash password from the password string using hashing algorithm. So suppose you create a password string and enter your password as password@123, and you put it inside the password hash function. So what it will generate is, we are echoing this generated hash. So what it will generate is this. So this is random. It changes every time you generate the password since it is encrypted, and same when you pass this password to the database using hashing algorithm, even in the database the password will not be visible. So your data is secure. Next question, mention different sorting functions for arrays in PHP. Now let us understand this question in the VS Code. So PHP consists of different sorting functions which you can use to sort a given array automatically. So if you want to sort an array in ascending order, what you need to do is use this sort function. So it will sort this array in ascending order. Now if you want to sort it in descending order, use rsort, that is reverse sort. Similarly, suppose you want to sort an array in terms of value in ascending order. So you need to use a sort function, that is this. So in terms of value, what in terms of value means is, suppose in a given array, there are keys and values. So it will sort the array based on the values, that is this 22, 27 and 37. So the array will be the same since the values are already sorted. Now if you want to sort the array in according to key, that is this, you can use ksort, that is key sort function that is provided in PHP. So in case of key sort, what it does is it will sort the array in key, that is the first one would be D, that is Duke, second M, Mac, and the third R, that is raw. Now, if you want to sort this array in descending order in terms of value, you use, instead of a sort, you use a reverse sort. Similarly, if you want to sort an array in terms of key in descending, you use k, instead of k sort, kr sort, that is k reverse sort. So these are the different sorting functions that are inbuilt into PHP. Moving on, what will be the output of the following code? Now, if this code is given, let me give you some time and try to pause this video and think of what will be the output of the following code. So the output of this code will be 21, 21 or 21, 21. How did it happen? But before that, if you got it correct, congratulations. But if you want to understand it, see, a is a variable that contains the value 1, while a b is a variable that is getting the value of a variable through reference. Now, we make changes in the b variable with 2 followed by this variable again, which is calling the value of a by reference. So if we make changes here, we also make changes in the value of a. Now, if we display this, since the value of a is already changed by reference, it will display 21, that is the value here, and again, since the value of b is already 21, it will again display 21. Moving on, what are construct function and destruct function in PHP? So a constructor or construct function is automatically invoked when a new object of a class is created and then can be used to initialize value in class. So when you create an object for a class, a constructor function is automatically invoked. But this can also be, so it does not contain any value when it is invoked. But you can also use this construct function to initialize some properties, to give some properties to the class, which will act as its default properties if nothing or no new properties are given to the class. Next is a destruct. Now, a destruct is automatically invoked when an object of a class is destructed. Suppose you end the part of the code of a class, you are destroying the object. When you're ending the piece of code, a destruct function is automatically invoked to clean up the resources. Next is how can PHP and JavaScript interact. Now, PHP and JavaScript cannot directly interact with each other since PHP is a server-side scripting language while JavaScript is a client-side language. But there is a way that these two wonderful languages can interact with each other. So we can swap variables since PHP can produce JavaScript code to be implemented by the browser. So yes, you can produce JavaScript code from PHP which can then be implemented by a browser, and then it is probable to pass those precise variables back to PHP via a URL. Next question is, explain type hinting in PHP. Now in PHP, type hinting is used to specify the expected data type, that is array, object, interface, etc. for an argument in a function declaration. Now during a function call, suppose if arguments does not match the expected data type, the runtime will display an error and that is a fatal error, and the program will then terminate. Now in this code here, what we are doing is we are type hinting. So this code is for string type hinting and this code is for integer type hinting. Now if these particular set of functions that have already specified the type they are expecting does not receive the same type of variable inside them, the program will return in a fatal error and it will terminate. So moving on to our final question of this video, write a class. So yes, this is an assignment, a kind of assignment for you guys. So what you need to do is you need to write a class to solve the following question which I'm going to say. So implement a class named basketball. We all like basketball, right? So implement a class named basketball with an attribute named baskets. So you have to create an attribute named baskets and initialize it to 0 as the starting position and then create a method named score. Now when the score method is invoked, the baskets must increase by 1. So let's see the solution now. So this is how you create a class that is basketball. Now inside this class, what we are going to do is we are going to initialize the number of baskets, that is this variable, as 0 as the starting position. So to do that, what we're going to do is we will be using construct function as we discussed to initialize some default properties for the class. So this construct function is used to initialize this baskets variable to 0. Now suppose we do not call this function score, which is increasing the number of baskets, the default value will be displayed as 0 every time. Now suppose we invoke this score function every time a basket is scored, this will increase the number of baskets by 1. So this is pretty simple, and this is how you create a simple class which will perform the following question.
SQL is a very important technology that is used in the IT industry. Professionals working as application developers, web developers, data analysts, data scientists, software testers, and cybersecurity experts need to know SQL. In this video, we will cover 30 important SQL questions that are most frequently asked in the interviews. So before I begin, make sure to subscribe to the Simplilearn channel and hit the bell icon to never miss an update. Now these questions consist of a set of theoretical and practical questions. So we will use different commands, functions, joins, and other functionalities in Excel to solve the problems. So let's get started with the first question. So the first question is to state the difference between where and having clause in SQL. Now where and having are very widely used in SQL to solve specific problems. Now let's look at the difference one by one. So where clause is used to filter the records from the table based on the specified condition and can be used without the group by clause. On the other hand, having clause is used to filter the records from groups based on specified conditions. Now where clauses cannot have aggregate functions, so you cannot use sum, count, average, min and maximum functions in the where clause. While in the having clause, you can operate on aggregate functions, and those aggregate functions are used to filter values from a group. Now where clause is implemented on rows or at row level. So for each row of data, you have the where condition applied. Now having clauses are implemented on columns. So for each column of data, you have the having condition applied. Now another important difference between where and having is that the where clause is executed before the execution of the group by clause and after the execution of the from clause. On the other hand, the having clause is executed after groups are created. Now we will learn more about where and having and understand the usage better when we tackle practical problems in this video. Now moving to our next question, which is how is drop different from truncate? So drop and truncate are two different commands. So drop command is used to drop the whole table, removing the table definition and its contents, while truncate deletes all the rows from the table. Now we can drop the whole table structure in one go, so the view of the table does not exist. By using the truncate command, the existence of all the rows in the table is lost, but the view in the table exists. Now integrity constraints will be removed in drop command, while the integrity constraints will not be removed when you use the truncate command. Now moving to our third question. Now this is a practical question. So we will be using a table which is present in my MySQL database. So the table name is called employees, and I want to find the lowest salary of the employees in each department. You can see here, this is how my employees table looks, and the output query would be something like this. So here, since I want to find the lowest salary of the employees, so I'm using a min function to find the lowest salary in the table, and then I'm grouping all the employees and the results by department. So let's do this on MySQL Workbench. Okay, So here I am on my MySQL workbench. First let me go ahead and create a new SQL script. So I'll click on this and that will create a new script. Okay, so here we'll write our commands. Alright, so our question was to find the lowest salary for each department. Okay, so I've given my comment to make my commands and whatever I'm doing more readable. So first, before I proceed, I need to select my database. So I'm going to use my SQL_intro database. So I'll write use SQL_intro. Now this database has a lot of tables that we'll be using in this interview questions video. I'll run it. Okay, we are in our SQL_intro database. Now there is a table called employees. Let me show you the table first. If I write select star from employees, okay, so here you can see this is the table I'm talking about. Now these are the rows that are present in the table. We have 20 rows, and here you can see the different columns. We have the employee ID, employee name, age, gender. We have the department, city and salary. Now this is the same table that we have also used in our other videos that are already live on YouTube. Okay, so let's solve our question to find the lowest salary for each department. Now for that I'll write select. I'll select my department column, which is DEPT, comma, and then to calculate the lowest salary or to find the lowest salary, I'm going to use the min function. So that will return the minimum salary present in the salary column. So I'll write min salary as, I'm giving an alias name as, let's say, lowest underscore salary from my table name, that is employees. Then I'll write group by department. Now I'm grouping it by department because we want to find the lowest salary of the employees in each department. Now let's run and see the result. There you go. I'll just move it to the top so that you can see the results clearly. Okay, so here we have total 7 departments, you can see at the bottom, and in these 7 departments you can see in sales 70,000, let's say, dollars was the lowest salary. In marketing we had $55,000 as the lowest salary. Similarly, if I scroll down, we have other departments like tech, IT, finance and HR. So these are the lowest salary in each department. Alright, now moving to our next question. So our fourth question is, which query will help you fetch unique values from a column in a table? So this is a multiple choice question, which is another type of question that is often asked in the SQL interviews. Now we have multiple queries here and you need to choose the right query that will solve our problem. So since I want to get the unique values from a column in a table, so the right option would be to use the distinct keyword in the query. So if I write select distinct followed by the column name, let's say you want to find the distinct cities or the distinct departments in the employees table, so the query would be select distinct city or let's say department from the table name, that is employees. Hence this is the right option if you want to find any unique values from a column. Now moving to the fifth question. Now the fifth question says, it is actually a similar question here. We want to write the SQL query to fetch unique departments from the employees table. So as we saw, this is our employees table, and if you want to find the unique departments from the employees table, you can just write select distinct then followed by the column name, which is departments here, so DEPT from employees. Let's do this on our MySQL workbench. Okay, so let me just scroll down and I'll give a comment here. That is, we want to find the unique departments. So the query would be select, then I'll use the distinct keyword. If I hit tab, it will autocomplete. Then I have my column, that is department, from my table name, that is employees. If I run this, the query will give us the unique departments that are present in the table. So here we have total 7 unique departments in the table. You can see here we have sales, marketing, product, tech, IT, finance and HR. But if you see our original table, which is the employees table, so there are total 20 records, and if you see the department column, there are multiple departments to which each of these employees belong to. Okay, now moving ahead. Now the sixth question is to write an SQL query to fetch the unique values of departments and print their length. Now this question consists of two parts. First, we need to fetch the unique values of departments that we saw in our fifth question, and then we want to print the length of each of the departments. So for that, I'm using the distinct keyword to find the unique departments, and then I'm using the inbuilt length function that is present in MySQL to find the length of the department, and then I'm using an alias that is length underscore department from employees. So let's say this on our workbench. Okay, so let me give a comment. I'll say unique departments and length. Okay, so the query would be, I'll write select distinct department, and then let me just scroll down. I'll give a comma and use my inbuilt length function. See, I'm hitting tab to autocomplete, and inside the length function I'll give my column name, that is department. I'll give an alias as department underscore length from my table, that is employees. This is pretty simple. So first I'm finding the unique departments, and then using the length function I'm finding the length of each department. Let's run and see. Okay, you can see the result here. So sales, the length is 5. Marketing, the length of marketing is 9. So basically you're counting the number of characters that are present in each of the departments. So in sales there are total 5 characters, in marketing there are total 9 characters, in product there are total 7 characters, in IT we have just 2 letters, I and T, so hence the length is 2. Similarly finance is 7 and HR is 2 because we have just 2 letters, H and R. Okay, so this is another variation of using distinct along with any inbuilt function. Alright. Now moving to the seventh question. The question is, what is the use of dateDiff function in SQL? Now dateDiff returns the number of days between two date or date time or timestamp values. So dateDiff is another crucial inbuilt function that is present in MySQL. So here is how you can use the dateDiff function. So it will return the number of days between two dates or date time or timestamp values. So here I have two date values, that is 10th of April 2021 and I have 30th of March 2021. So this query will give us the total number of days that lie between these two dates. And similarly, here is another example of using the dateDiff function. So I want to calculate the total number of days that are present between today's date, so I am using the now function, and between 20th of April 2021. So let's do this demo on the workbench. Alright, first I'll give a comment saying DateDiff function. Okay, now the way to use is I'll write select, and then you can see here once I type date, MySQL Workbench is automatically suggesting some of the inbuilt functions. I'm going to use DateDiff, and within DateDiff I'm going to pass in two values. So I'm passing in two date values, let's say 2021 April. So I'll write 04 and let's say 10th of April. I'll give another comma and I'll pass in my second date value, that is going to be 30th of March 2021. Alright, now another thing to note here is the date value should be present inside quotations. Now if you want, you can give an alias as well. I'll write as total days. Let's run it. There you go. It has given us the output as 10. So there are total 10 days between 31st of March to 10th of April. Now let's see another example. I'll write select date diff and we'll pass in my now function. So the now function returns the current date, that is today's date, and I'll give another date value, let's say 2021 April 20th. Now we'll see the results. If you want, you can give an alias name so that the output is more readable here. I'll run it. Okay, so between today's date and my previous date, that was 20th of April, there are total 49 days. So today's date is actually 8th of June. So between 20th of April and 8th of June, there are total 49 days. Alright, now moving ahead. Now in the 8th question, we want to write an SQL query to display the departments that have more than 2 employees. So this is our employees table that we have been using, and here is how the command looks like. So here we are using both group by and having. Now I am grouping by department because I want to display the departments that have more than 2 employees. Now for the second filter, I am using the count function of the employee IDs and checking if the employees in each department are more than 2 or not. Let's do this. Let me move down a bit and I'll give a comment, departments with more than 2 employees. Okay, now let's write our query. So I want to select the department and then I'm using the count function to count the employee IDs in each department, or the employees present in each department. From my table, that is employees, I'm going to group by department and then I'll use having my count of employee ID. This should be greater than 2. So our query will return only those departments which have more than 2 employees. Let's run and see. There you go. So we have total 4 departments, that is sales, product, tech and IT, where we have more than 2 employees. You can see here sales has 4 employees, product has 3, tech has 4 and IT has 3. The rest other departments like finance, HR and others have less than 2 employees. Now if you want, you can give an alias as well. Let's say as total employees. Okay, let me run it again, and here you can see I have the column name as total employees. Okay, so moving ahead, the 9th question, we want to display the details of the employees for all the departments except marketing. Now here I have my employees table. Now if I were to display all the details of the employees apart from marketing department, I can give a condition like where department not equal to marketing. So this is the way how you write not equal to. So you use the less than and greater than symbol. Another way to do is use the exclamation mark and give equal to. So this means select all the employees where department is not equal to marketing. Now let's do this. I'll move down a bit and we'll give a comment as details of employees apart from marketing. So the query would be select star from employees. I'm using star because I want to display all the details. That means I want to display all the columns. Then I'm going to use my where condition where department not equal to marketing. I'll put marketing under quotes. Let's run it and see the results. There you go. So we have total 18 rows of information, and if you see the department column, we have all the departments apart from marketing. Now if you remember, our employees table had total 20 rows of information, out of which 2 are missing, which means there were 2 employees who were from marketing department and those departments were not displaying. Now another way to do is to use exclamation mark and equal to. So this also means select all the employees where department is not equal to marketing. Let's run this. You see here it gives us the same result and has returned us 18 rows of information, leaving apart the employees from the marketing department. Alright, now moving ahead. So our 10th question is to write an SQL query to print the details of the employees who have joined before April 2010 and after May 2005. So here is my employees table and this is my SQL query. So here we are using just a where condition to filter our results, and my condition is the employee should have joined after May 2005. So I have written after 31st of May 2005 and before April 2010, which is before 31st of March 2010. Let's do this. I'll give a comment here. We'll write employees joined before April 2010 and after May 2005. Now let's write our SQL query. So I'll write select star from employees where my date of join. If you see here, I have a column called date of join which has the details about the day on which the employee had joined the company. So I'm going to write where date of join is greater than 31st of May 2005. So I'll write 2005. This is one of the formats to use date values. So this is the year value, this is the month value, and this is the day value. And my date of join should be less than 31st of March 2010. So I'll write 2010 March 31st. I hope you were able to understand this. Date of join greater than 31st of May 2005 means after May 2005, and date of join less than 31st of March 2010, this means employees joined before 2010 April. Let's run it. Okay, so we have total 3 employees in our table. You can see the date of join, and all of them have joined after May 2005 and before April 2010. Okay. Now moving ahead to the 11th question. So here we want to find the employee with the third highest salary from the table. So I have my employees table here, and my command would look something like this. So here we are going to explore how to write subqueries in SQL. So I'm using a subquery here where I'm trying to find the employees who have the top 3 salaries, or the top 3 employees who have the highest salaries, and from that I'm going to filter out my third highest salary employee. So let's do it on our workbench. Okay, so I'll come down and let me give a comment as third highest salary. Okay, so let me first write down my SQL query and then I'll explain. So I'll write select star from. After that I'll start a bracket and write my inner query. So I'll write select star from employees order by salary descending. Then I'll use my limit keyword and I'll write limit 3 as, I'll give an alias name, let's say T, and then I'm again going to use my order by salary limit 1. Okay, now let me explain you the flow. So first let me run the inner query. I'll select my inner query and I'll run it. So the inner query returns my top 3 employees who have the highest salary, and this is ordered in descending order since I used salary descending. Now let me just use this. Okay, now you can see it clearly. So these are my top 3 employees who have the highest salary. So Joseph has the maximum salary, followed by Angela, and then we have Jack. Now from this I want to return only the record for Jack, because Jack is the employee who earns the third highest salary. So for that I am going to use the result returned by my subquery or the inner query, and on top of this I'm going to order the salary and say limit equal to 1. So I'm again ordering this salary in ascending order. So what will happen? Jack will appear at the top, Angela will be at the second place, and Joseph will come to the third place. And from there I'm using limit 1 so that I can only get the record for Jack. Now if I run the entire query, you see the result. I have my employee name as Jack who earns the third highest salary. Okay. Now moving ahead to the 12th question. The question is to print all the alternate records in a table. So here is my employees table, and from this table I am going to print all the alternate records. For example, I am going to print my employee ID 101, then I am going to skip 102 and print 103, followed by 105, 107, 109. So all the employee IDs that have an odd value. And you can look at this example in another way of displaying the employees which have an employee ID of even numbers. So 102, 104, 106 and so on. Now the way to do is, either you can use a simple select clause and say employee ID percentage or modulus 2 equal to 0, which means I want to filter only those employees which have an even employee ID. Else what you can do is you can use a CTE, as you can see here. So CTE, or the common table expression, is a temporary named result set that you can reference within a select, insert, update or delete statement. Now it is used to simplify complex joins and subqueries and to provide a means to query hierarchical data. Now let's write this query on our workbench and see how it works. But before that, let me explain you. I am using a few new functions such as row number. This will create a row number for each of the rows or the records present in my table, and then from this CTE I am going to use my filter clause or the where clause, where rn, which is row number, %2 equal to 1. So this will return only the odd records from the table. Let's see how to do it. Okay, so I'll give a comment, print alternate records. Okay, now I'll start with my simple query, which is select star from employees, where let's say I want to find only the even employee IDs or the employees who have an even employee ID. So I can use employee ID %2 equal to 0. So it has to be a perfect division and the result should be 0. Only then I can get only the even employees. If I run this, okay, there was an error here. It should be employees. I'll run it again. You can see here I have printed the alternate records in a table. So we have skipped 101 because it is not divisible by 2. I've started with 102, followed by 104, 106, 108, and then finally we have 120 or 120. Now if you want to print only the odd records in the table, you can use employee ID %2 equal to 1. So you can see here I have 101, 103, 105, 107 up to 119. Now the best way to do this is to use a common table expression or CTE. So I'll start with my command, that is with CTE, as I'll start with my bracket. I'll write select star comma, then I'm going to use my row number function. So I'll write row number, then I'll write over, then I'll use order by employee ID. So this row number for each of the rows is going to be created over my employee ID column, and that is sorted in ascending order. I'll give an alias as rn, which stands for row number, from my table, that is employees. I'll scroll down and then I'm going to close my bracket. I'll write select. Let me remove the space here. Okay, I'll write select star from CTE, where my row number %2 equal to 1. Now let's see this from the top. So I have my common table expression where I am going to create a row number column named as rn, and this row number column is based on my employee ID column, which is sorted in ascending order, and from that I'm going to filter only those row number values that are not divisible by 2, or I'm going to print only the odd records from the table. So let's run it and see the results. There you go. So here if you mark, I have my row number column created and I am filtering only the odd records in the table. So it starts with 1, 3, 5, 7 and goes up to 19. And similarly here you can see the employee IDs, the name, the age, gender and other information. Now if you were to print the even records in the table, the alternate even records, you can use rn %2 equal to 0. Let's see the difference. I'll run this. There you go. So I have my even row number starting from 2, which goes up to 20. Okay, So this is how you can print alternate records in a table. Now moving to the next question. Now in the 13th question, we want to write an SQL query to fetch all the duplicate rows in a table. Now this is another crucial interview question that is often asked in most of the interviews. Now I have a table which is named as duplicate table, and here you can see I have some employee ID, name and age, and a few records are duplicated. For example, 101 Sam 40, the first record is duplicated, and you can see here it has the same values. Now if you mark 103 Mary and 28 is not duplicated because here the age is different, so this is a different person than compared to the third name that we have. So this is how you can find the duplicate rows in a table. So I'm going to select my employee ID, name and age, and then count all the employee IDs, the names and age, and compare them with whether they are greater than 1 or not. So if they are greater than 1, then I'll say that particular record is duplicated or is present more than one time in the table. Let's do this implementation on our workbench. Okay, so I'll come down and let me give my comment as duplicate records. Okay, so let me first show you the records that are present in my table. So I'll write select star from DUP underscore employees. I'll run it. Okay, you can see here I have my table that we saw in the slides. So employee ID 101 with name Sam and age 40 is duplicated. So we want to find this duplicate record. The way to do is I'll write select E underscore ID, which is employee ID, comma name, comma age, comma I'm going to count all of them. So I'll write count star as duplicate count. This is my alias name from my table that is DUP underscore employees. I'll say group by employee ID, name and age, and then I'm going to use my having clause saying having count of employee ID is greater than 1 and count of name should also be greater than 1 and my count of age should also be greater than 1. Let's run it and see the results. Okay, there is some error here. The name of the table should be employees. Okay, let's run again. We have our correct result, that is employee ID 101 with name Sam and age 40 is duplicated, so the value is 2. Great. Now moving ahead. Now the 14th question is a bit tricky, wherein we want to display the employees with exactly 2 A's in their name. So you see here I have my employee names and there are certain employees who have just 2 A's in their names. So I want to find those employees only. Now the way to do is, it is a bit tricky to understand. I'm going to break it down and make you understand on my MySQL workbench. So here you can just have a glance. I write select star from employees where I am finding the length of my employee name and then subtracting my length wherein I have replaced my employee name that has A with a blank, and if this subtraction is equal to 2, then that particular employee has 2 A's in their names. So let me show this first. Let me first give my comment as employees with 2 E's. Okay. So first I'm going to write a select statement. Okay, before that I'll show you the records present in my table. Okay, if you see here, Shane is one of the employees that has just 1 A in its name. Then we have Mary 1 A, Dwayne has 1 A, but if you see Sarah has 2 A in the name, so we want to extract Sarah. Then Jack has 1 A. Again, if you see Angela has 2 A. It doesn't matter if it is uppercase A or lowercase a, we just need to find if the employees have 2 A's in their name. And similarly, if I scroll down, let me check if we have any other employee with 2 A's in their name. Marcus has 1, David has 1, Sophia has 1. We also have Amelia that has 2 A's in its name or in her name. And we also have Maya. Okay, now let me go ahead and write a SQL query, and then I'll explain you what I'm trying to do. I'll write select. I'm using the length function, and in the length function I'm going to replace, then I'll use another function called upper on top of employee name. I'll write A and then replace it with a blank. So I'm using quotations to represent blank from employees. Okay, let's run this and see the results. You see here it has given us the length of the employee strings after replacing all the A's with a blank. So here I'm essentially converting my employee names to uppercase, and I'm changing wherever there is an A, I'm replacing that A with a blank, and then I'm finding the length. So this trick I'm going to use in my final query. So I'll write select star from employees, where what I'm going to do is I'll bring this to the next line. I'll write length of employee name minus, then I'm going to use my above condition. I'll copy this, I'll paste it here, and this value should be 2. So what I'm doing is I am first finding out the length of my employee name. From that I'm subtracting the length after replacing the A's present in the employee name with a blank, and this value should be equal to 2. The reason being we are only trying to find the employees who have 2 A's in their name. Let's run and see the results. Okay, if you see here we have Sarah, Angela, Amelia and Maya who have 2 A's in their name. So we have Sarah that has 2A, Angela has 2A, Amelia has 2 A's, and then Maya also has 2A. Okay, now moving ahead. Now the 15th question is, given a string, how will you extract 4 characters starting from the second position? So I have my string here which says Michael Ballack. Now Michael Ballack, you must be aware, is a popular footballer. He is from Germany and also was the captain of Germany. So from the string Michael Ballack, I am going to extract 4 characters starting from the second position. You can use 2 inbuilt MySQL functions to do this. The first is called substr, wherein we pass in the string, then we give the position from where we want to extract the characters. So here I am going to extract from the second position, so hence 2, and then the number of characters that you want to extract, which is 4. The other way is to use the substring function, which is again similar to the substr function. In the substring function also, I am first passing in my input string and then giving my starting position, which is 2, and then I want to extract 4 characters from it. Let's do it. I'll give a comment, extract strings. So here I'm going to write select. First I'm going to use substr, which is my inbuilt function. I'm going to pass in my input string, which says Michael Ballack, and then I'll give my starting position, which is 2, and then the number of characters, that is 4. Let's run it and see the results. You can see here it has given us ICHA. So if you see, M is at the first position. From the second position onwards, I needed 4 characters, so M, C, H and A. These are the 4 characters starting from the second position. Similarly, let me just copy this, and instead of substr, I'm going to use the substring function. I'll write just ing, that becomes substring. Let's select and run it, and this also returns the same result. Suppose you wanted to extract from the 4th position, you wanted to extract, let's say, 3 characters. Let's see the results. It gives us H, A and E. If you see here, M is the first position, I is at the second position, C is at the third position, H starts from the 4th position. So H, A and E are the next 3 characters starting from the 4th position. So hence this is the result. Alright, now moving ahead. Now my 16th question is on how does self-join work. So self-join joins a table to itself. So the table must contain a column X that acts as the primary key, and a different column, let's say Y, that stores values that can be matched up with the values in column X. Now this might not be really easy to understand. You'll get to know once we do this demo. So I have a table which is called employee manager. So this is my table. Now let me tell you how to interpret this table. We have 5 different employees starting from employee ID 1 to employee ID 5. Gary, Gibbs, Smith, Latham and Jimmy are the different employees we have. You have their salaries, and now you have the employees reporting to which manager. Now if you see here, Gary's manager ID is 3. So if you see our table, at 3 we have Smith. So Gary is reporting to 3, or in other words, Smith has a employee under him who is Gary. Similarly, Gibbs is reporting to manager ID 1 or employee ID 1, which is Gary. So Gibbs manager is Gary. Similarly, if you see for Smith, Smith is reporting to the person with manager ID 4 or employee ID 4. We have Latham. So Latham has one employee under him who is Smith. Now Latham in our table has no managers. Then we have Jimmy who's reporting to the employee ID 3 who is Smith. Okay. Now I want to use this table and return the name of the manager for each employee. To do that, I am going to use my self join. So here I am using a self join to join both the tables. Here both the tables mean I am using the same table twice. So I have written select e.employee ID, e.employee name, then we have e.manager ID. Then I am using another alias for managers. So m.employee name as manager underscore name from employee underscore manager as e. This join means self join employee underscore manager as m on e.manager ID equal to e.employee ID. So this is my common column, that is employee ID and manager ID. Let's do it. Alright, I'll give a comment here saying self join, and I'll start with my self join. I'll write select. Let me first display my table. I'll write select star from, and my table name is emp underscore manager. I'll run it. You can see the table here. This is the same table that we saw in the slides. Now I'll write my join query. I'll write select e dot employee ID, comma, e dot employee name, comma, e dot manager ID, comma, then I'm using another alias as m for finding the manager name. So m dot employee name as manager name. There shouldn't be any space in the alias name. Then I'll write from emp underscore manager as e, join emp underscore manager as m on e dot manager underscore id equal to m dot emp underscore id. Let me run this and we'll see the results. There you go. So Gary reports to the manager ID 3. So from the table, 3 is for Smith. So Gary's manager is Smith, Gibbs' manager is Gary, Smith's manager is Latham, and Jimmy's manager is Smith. Okay, so this is how you can use self-join. Now moving ahead with our next question. So the 17th question is on which of the following is called a virtual table in SQL. So again we have a multiple choice question. So the answer is view. You can see here. So view is a virtual table that has rows and columns as they are in a real table in the database. Now we can create a view by selecting fields from one or more tables present in the database. Next, moving to the 18th question. So here we want to write an SQL query to fetch the list of employees with the same salary. Again, I'm going to use a self join here, wherein I'll join the same employees table, and this is how my query would look like. So I'm selecting distinct employee ID, so e dot employee ID, e dot employee name, e dot salary from employees. Then I'm joining employees as e on employees e1, where e dot salary equal to e1 dot salary, because I want to fetch the list of employees with the same salary, and I'm ensuring that the employee IDs from both the tables are different. Let's do it. I'll give a comment here and write employees with same salary, and I'll start with my query. I'll write select distinct e dot employee ID, comma, I'll write e dot employee name, comma, e dot salary from employees as e, then employees as e1, where e dot salary equal to e1 dot salary and e dot employee ID is not equal to e1 dot employee ID. I'll give a semicolon and let's print the results. You see here we have Amelia, Bella, Shane and Sarah who have the same salary. So Amelia and Shane have the same salary of $55,000. Bella and Sarah have the same salary of $72,000. Okay. Now moving to the 19th question. So the question is to write an SQL query to print one row twice in results from a table. So I have a table here called employees and I want to print one row twice in the results. So to solve such kind of problems, you need to use the union all operator in SQL. So union all combines the result sets of two or more select statements. It does not remove duplicate rows. Between the various select statements, all the rows are returned. So let's say I want to print the employee name and department for those employees who are from the HR department. Now to do this, we can use the union all operator. You can see it here. So I'm selecting my employee name, the department from my table employees as E. Then I'm giving my where clause where E.department equal to HR. And then I'm using the union all operator. Then I'm again selecting my employee name, department from employees with another alias as E1 where E1.department equal to HR. So let's do this. Okay, so I'll give my comment as print row twice. Okay, now I'll start with my query. I'll write select my employee name, comma, the department from my table that is employees as E. Then I'll use where E.department equal to HR. Then I'm going to use the union all operator. So the union all will combine the result set of two or more select statements. Then I'm going to write select emp underscore name, comma, my department from employees as E1 where E1.department equal to HR. I'll give a semicolon. Now let's run it. There you go. You can see here Marcus and Sophia are from the HR department and we have printed them twice in our results. Coming to the next question. The question is, using the num table, write a query to add 10 when number is 0, 20 when number is 1, else print the number itself. So you can see here I have my table called num and it has just one column which is num ID or number ID. We have some numbers here and from these numbers I want to add 10 if the number is 0, 20 if the number is 1, else I would print the number itself. So to answer this question we'll use the case statement in SQL. So the case statement is SQL's way of handling if-then logic. The case statement is followed by at least one pair of when and then statements. So here you can see I have my case statement. I'm writing when case, my column name n underscore id equal to 0, then add plus 10. If it is 1, then add plus 20, else we'll just return the number id. Now let's do this. Okay, I'll give a comment saying using case statements. Okay, first of all let me display the values present in my NUM table. You can see here this is my table and there are total 12 rows of numbers. Now let's start with our query. I'll write select n underscore id, comma, then I'm going to write my case statement. So I'll use the keyword as case when n underscore id equal to 0. I'll use then n underscore id plus 10. I'll write when n underscore id equal to 1, then n underscore id plus 20, else I'll just print NID. Now I'll end my case statement. I'll write end as an alias name, let's say num underscore add, from my table that is num. Let's run and see the results. Okay, you can see here my first number was 0. So since it was 0, we have added numID or NID plus 10. So the result is 10. Now wherever the numID is 1, for example here we have added 20, so the result or the output becomes 21. Similarly here the value was 0, so we have added 10, the output is 10. And you see here again, here we had another 1, so we added 1 to 20, so the result becomes 21. And for the rest of the numbers, for example 3, we had 2, the values are the same. Okay, now moving ahead. So we have a table called num1, and using this table we want to write a query to find the sum of all positive values and the negative values. So let's see the table first. So this is my table, which is num1. You can see here we have a list of integers, and there are positive as well as negative integers. So for positive values and the negative values, we want to find the sum separately. So again, for this we are using the case statement. You can see here I have used two case statements. I'm writing select, and then I'm using the case to find if the number is greater than 0, which means it's a positive number. So I'm finding out the sum, and then I'm checking case when the integer is less than 0, so it's a negative number, and I'm finding the sum for the negative numbers as well. Let's do this. Okay, so I'll give my comment as add positive and negative numbers. Okay, so let's start with our select query. I'll write select. I'll use the sum function, and inside the sum function I'll use my case statement. So I'll write case when num underscore integer. Okay, before that let me just print the values present in my table. So I'll write select star from my table name, that is num1. Okay, so you can see here these are the values or the list of integers that we have. There are some positive as well as negative integers. Okay, let's continue with our query. So here I'm going to write case when num underscore integer or int, which is my column name, if it is greater than 0, then I'll return num underscore int. Else I'll say 0 and end my case statement. I'll give an alias as sum of, let's say, positive numbers. I'll give a comma. Then I'll use another sum function, and inside the sum function we'll use the case statement to find the sum of negative numbers or integers. So I'll write num underscore int. If it is less than 0, then num underscore int, else 0, and I'll end. Okay, and I'll give another alias name as, let's say, sum underscore neg, which stands for negative. POS is for positive integers, and then I'll write from my table, that is num1. Let's run it. Okay, there you go. We have our results. So we have two columns, sum of positive integers and sum of negative integers. You can see the results, 19 and minus 14 respectively. Okay, now moving ahead. Now in question number 22, we want to list the difference between primary key and foreign key. So as you can see here, primary key is something that can uniquely identify a record in a table. So if you consider a school database, a primary key would ideally be the roll number or the registration number of the student, because that is unique to all the students in a school. Now foreign key is the field in the table that is primary key to another table. So suppose you have another table called courses to which the students have enrolled to. Now if you have a roll number or a registration number column in the course table, that becomes the foreign key. Now the other difference is primary key don't accept or cannot accept null values, while foreign key can accept null values. Now you can have only one primary key in a table, but you can have more than one foreign key in a table. Now coming to the 23rd question, what is the difference between primary key and union? So you can have only one primary key in a table as we discussed in the previous question, but you can have more than one unique key in a table. A primary key column cannot have null values, but union can accept null values. Now if you assign a column as a primary key, you create a clustered index, and similarly if you assign a column with union, you create non-clustered index. Okay. Now coming to the 24th question, what is a check constraint in SQL? So check constraints are used while creating tables. Check constraint helps to limit or restrict the values that can be inserted into a column. For example, we have a table here, let's say dummy 1, and you want to ensure that every time you insert the age of people or persons in the table, you want to make sure that age should be always greater than 0. Reason being, a person cannot have, or an animal cannot have, or a tree cannot have a negative age. Similarly, you can set a constant for the salary column in a table to ensure that it is always greater than 0, because you cannot earn a negative salary, or it cannot be less than 0. Now we are going to create a dummy table on my MySQL workbench and see how check constraints can be applied. Okay, so let's give our comment as check constraints. Alright, so I'm going to create a table called dummy, let's say underscore SQL. Now this table will have a few columns. First we have, let's say, EID, which stands for employee ID. The data type is integer, and I'm going to assign employee ID as my primary key. So I'll write primary key here. Okay, I'll give a comma. Next we'll have a city column. City column is of type var char or varying character. I'll give the size as 30, and here I'm going to apply my check constraint to this city column. I'm going to check the city should take only values as Mumbai. Let's say I'll have my final column, that is age. Age is of type integer, and here I'm going to check my age should always be greater than 0. So I'll write check age greater than 0. Okay, so our dummy SQL table has one primary key constraint, and we have applied two check constraints on city and age column. Let's run this. Okay, so we have created our table successfully. You can see it here. Now let's insert a few records and we can see the difference. I'll write insert into dummy underscore SQL. I'll write values. I'll have my employee ID as 101. I'm giving my city as Mumbai, which is what we want. And let's say I'll give my age as 10. Now this should perfectly work because my city is Mumbai and my age is greater than 0. So I should be able to insert this record successfully. You can see here I have inserted this record to the table. I'll write select star from dummy SQL so that you can check. Let's run it. There is some mistake. I should write from. Okay. Let's run it. You can see it here. We have one record or one row returned. Now let's say we'll insert another record. And this time I'm going to give my employee ID as 102 because it has to be unique. And this time instead of Mumbai, I'm going to give my city as, let's say, Delhi. So I'm not following my check constraint where I am supposed to give only Mumbai. I'm purposely giving Delhi here to see the difference. If I run this, let's say we'll have age is 40, which is greater than 0. Let's run it. You see here we get an error saying check constraint dummy underscore SQL underscore check is violated. Similarly, let's say I'll change this to Mumbai again, and instead of 40, let's say I'll give us minus 30. So your age can never be in negative numbers. If I run this, I get the same error. My check constraint has been violated because age should be greater than 0. Okay, so this is how you can use check constraints in SQL. Now coming to the 25th question. So given two tables A and B, we want to write a query to fetch values in table B that are not present in table A. Now to answer this question, you can use the left join. So what left join does is, it returns all the rows from the left table and only matching rows from the right table. And I've used my condition as a.id, which is in the right table, should be null. Let's write this query on the workbench. Okay, so I'll give my comment using left join. First of all, let me display my tables. I'll write select star from A. If I run this, I have the IDs. There are total 5 IDs in table A. Similarly, I'll copy this and we'll see the values that are present in table B. So again, I have 5 values. There are a few non-matching values as well. So I want to return those non-matching values that are not present in table A. So for that, I'll write select ID from table B. I'll use left join A using my ID column. This is another way to give the condition, or you can use the on operator. Then I'll give where a.id is null. Let's run and see the results. There you go. So 150, 200 and 75 are not present in table A but are present in table B. Okay. Now moving ahead. So now we'll look at the last set of 5 questions. So these questions are based on the popular Northwind sample database provided by Microsoft. Now there are several tables in this database. So we have an order table, customers, employee, products, a region table and others. We'll use our Microsoft SQL Server to solve the 5 questions. So my next question, which is based on Microsoft SQL Server, the question is, using the Northwind database, find the customers who don't have any orders. Okay, so I am on my Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So this is how the interface looks like, and here you can see I have a list of databases. Now to solve the last 5 questions, I'm going to use the Northwind database. If I expand this, I'll click on the plus sign. You can see there are a lot of tables that are already present in the database. You can see here we have customers, employees, employee territories, order details, orders, products, region, shippers, suppliers, territories, and more. Okay, let me just collapse this. Alright, so to write my queries, I'm going to create a new query file, and here you see I am currently on my master database. I'm going to change this to Northwind database so that we can utilize all the tables that are present. So my 26th question was to find the customers who don't have any orders. So for that, I'm going to use two tables, customers and orders. So let me first give a comment saying customers with no orders, and now let's go ahead and display the columns that we have and see the records present in the tables customers and orders. So first I'm checking all the columns and the rows present in the customers table. I'll execute using this button, or you can hit F5 as well. Okay, you can see here there are total 91 customers. These are all unique customers. You have total 91 unique customer IDs. You see here the company name of the customer. You have the contact name, the contact title, address, city to which the customers belong to, then the region, postal code, country, phone, fax number. Okay, now let me just copy this query, and now we'll check for the orders table. I'll write select star from orders, and let's execute it or run it. Okay, so there are total 830 rows of information. So there were total 830 orders or order IDs. We have the customer ID. Now this customer ID is actually the foreign key for the orders table, but for the customers table, customer ID is the primary key, and in the orders table, order ID is the primary key. We also have the employee ID. Again, this employee ID is the foreign key for this orders table. We have the order date, we have the required date, ship date, ship via, which means by which medium the order was shipped. We have the freight charges, ship name and ship address as well. Then you have the city from which the item was shipped, the region, postal code and the country. Okay, now let me use the distinct keyword. I'll write select distinct. I want to find the distinct customer IDs from my customers table. Let's run and see how many unique customer IDs we have. So there are total 91 customer IDs or customers. Now let's check for the orders table. Let's run it and see the difference now. If you see here, there are total 89 customer IDs in the orders table, which means there are 2 customers missing from the orders table, and that implies those 2 customers don't have any orders. So to get the result, I will use 2 different queries to derive at the same output. So I'm going to select my customer ID from my table, that is customers. I'm going to use where my customer ID, and then I'm going to use the not in operator. I'm going to use a subquery select customer ID from my orders table. Close the bracket and I'll give a semicolon. Now what this query essentially does is, it is first going to find all the customer IDs that are present in my orders table, and in the outer query we are only going to return the customers that are present in both the tables, and we are going to exclude those customers which are not present in the orders table. So let's run and see the results. We should get 2 customer IDs. There you go. So these are the 2 customer IDs which are present in the customers table and are not present in the orders table, meaning that they don't have any orders in their name. Now there is another way to do it, that is to use the not exists operator, wherein you can write another subquery to get the same result. We'll leave that to you. You can try this out using the not exists operator as well. Coming to the 27th question. Using the orders table in the Northwind database, we want to find all the month-end orders. So such problems you will face while dealing with sales data. So very often sales executives would try hard to meet their month-end targets. We want to display all the orders made on the last day of the month. So let's solve this question on our Microsoft SQL Server. Okay, so let me first give my comment for the 27th question. So the question is to find all the month-end orders. So I'll just write month-end orders. Okay, now to get the month-end orders, we are going to use a built-in EO month function which stands for end of month. So let's start with the query. I'll write select. We are going to select the employee ID, comma, I also want the order ID, and we want the order date from my table, that is orders. I'll then give my where clause. I'll write where my order date equal to, and I'll use my inbuilt function, that is end of month. I have hit tab to autocomplete, and inside this function I'll pass in my order date column. Then I'm going to use the order by clause. I'm going to order it by employee ID and the order ID. I'll just move down and hit tab. Okay, let's run the query. There you go. We have got 26 rows of information. You see on the left side we have the employee IDs, the order IDs, and then we have the order date column. Now if you mark the values present in the order date column, these are all the end of month date values. You see this is 28th of Feb, then we have 31st of July, we have 30th of June, so on and so forth. So these are the list of all the orders that were placed on the last day of the month. Now coming to the 28th question, we want to find the top 5 countries with the highest freight charges in the year 1997. So freight charge is the amount paid to a carrier company for the transportation of goods from origin to another location. The freight charge is calculated based on the mode of transportation and the distance between the pickup place or the pickup location and the destination. So let's try this out on the Microsoft Server Management Studio. Okay, so let me go ahead and give my comment. So since we want to find the top 5 countries with the highest freight charges, I'll just give my comment as highest freight charges. Okay, now to solve this question, I'll just change this to GHT. Okay, we are going to use our orders table. So the way to do is I'll write select. I'm going to use the top 5. So top is another keyword or an operator. So I'm going to find out the ship country, and then I'll calculate the average freight prices. So I'm going to use the average inbuilt function on top of my column, that is freight. I'll give an alias as, let's say, average freight. There should be no space. I'll give a underscore. I'll write from my table, that is orders. I'll use my where clause where, and then I'm going to find the year from my order date column, and this year should be 1997. I'm going to group it by my ship country, and I'll use order by my alias name, that was average freight, and in descending order I'm going to sort it. Let's see the top 5 shipping countries who have the highest freight charges. These are the results. You have Austria, Switzerland, Sweden, Canada and Ireland, and here you can see the average freight prices sorted in descending order. Okay, now moving ahead to the 29th question. So here we want to display the total number of products in each category. So we have two different tables, products and categories. So both these tables we are going to use to find a solution to this problem, that is to display the total number of products in each category. So first let me give my comment to display the total number of products in each category. I'll just write print total products. Okay, so to solve this problem we are going to use our two tables. So let me first display the rows and columns from both the tables. The first table is products. Okay, it is products. Let's run this and see the columns that we have in this table. Okay, so you have the product ID, which is the primary key. You have the product name. So there are total 77 different products. Okay, and then you have the supplier ID, you have the category ID. So these two columns are the foreign key columns. You have the quantity per unit, unit price, units in stock, units in order, and if you want to reorder some product to fill in the stocks, so you have information for that as well, and if the product has been discontinued or not. I'll copy this and let's see what rows and columns we have in my categories table. Okay, let me execute this. Okay, so we have total 8 categories of products. You can see beverages, we have dairy products, meat or poultry, you have produce, seafood. These are the description. Okay, now to find the total number of products in each category, I'll write my query as select. I'll write category name, comma, count star. I'll give this an alias name as total products. Give an underscore and write products. From my first table, that is products, give an alias as P. I'm going to use an inner join with my categories table, and I'll give my alias as C on my common key column, that is P dot category ID is equal to C dot category ID. Then I'm going to group my results based on the category names. So I'll write category name and we'll use the order by clause. I'll write order by count star as descending. So let's see the total number of products that we have in each category. So this shouldn't be as descending, should be just count star descending. Okay, I'll select and run it. There you go. So here on the left hand side you have the different category names, and on the right you have the total number of products that belong to each of the categories. Alright. Now moving on to the final question. So the last question is to use the Northwind database, and using this database we want to find the list of late orders for all the employees. So this is a real world problem that often occurs. So the shipment of your orders might get delayed due to logistic issues, or if the products are not available on time. There can be various other reasons as well. So here we want to find those orders for the employees where the required date is less than the shipment date. So we are going to use two different tables, that is orders and employees. Okay, now let me give my comment for the final query that we are going to write in this interview questions tutorial. So using the orders table, I want to find the list of orders for all the employees. So I'll just give list of late orders, not just orders, for employees. I write EMPS, which stands for employees. So here I'm going to use two tables, orders and employees. Orders table we have already seen. Let's see the rows and columns that are present in the employees table. I'll write select star from employees and let me run it. Okay, so there are total 9 employees we have. So we have the employee ID. This is the primary key column which goes from 1 to 9. We have the last name of the employee, the first name of the employee. We have the title. Then we have the title of courtesy, whether doctor, Mr., Mrs. We have the birthday of the employee, the hire date or the date of join. You have the address, city, region, postal code and other information. Alright, so let's see how you can join the orders table and the employees table to get the list of late orders. And we must remember that late orders are those where the required date is less than equal to the shipped date. So I'll start with select E dot, I'll write employee ID, comma, I want the first name, comma, I'm going to count star as late orders from my table orders as O. Then I'll use my inner join. I'll write employees as E. It doesn't matter actually if you use small e or capital E. Then I'm going to use my on condition on E dot on E dot employee ID equal to O dot employee ID. So this is my common key column that is present in both the tables. Then I'll use my where clause where. Now you should be careful and you should give the right clause. So my required date should be less than or equal to my shipped date. So this is my condition, and then I'm going to group by E dot employee ID, comma, E dot first name, and then I'll use my order by clause, order by my alias name that was late orders, and I'll arrange it in descending order. So let's run this and see our result. Okay, so you have the employee IDs on the left, then you have the first name of the employee IDs, and then you have the late orders for each of these employees. So if you see here, employee ID 4 has the highest number of late orders, followed by employee ID 3 and 8 as well as 9 who have 5 late orders. Then we have the employee ID 2 which has 4 late orders. Even employee ID 7 has 4 late orders. Employee ID 5, that is Steven, has only 1 late orders. So we are done with our demo section and we have covered all our 30 questions. out of which 25 questions were based and used on MySQL server. And to address the last 5 questions, we used our Northwind database that had a lot of tables. You can see it here, and using those tables we solved some interesting questions. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this video tutorial on SQL interview questions. I hope this was useful and informative. If you want to get the SQL code file that we have used in this demo, then please feel free to put your email IDs in the comment section. Thank you for watching and keep learning.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.
And so with that, we come to the end of this session on web developer interview questions. If you have any doubts or queries, let us know in the comment section below. We'll be happy to help you. Watch out for more videos from us. Until then, keep learning and stay tuned to Simplilearn.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.